Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's panel. We're really excited to have all of you here today, and we're really looking forward to this conversation. I think it will be, a really wonderful and hopefully informative and helpful panel and session for all of us. So, today's conversation is going to be about mental health, and especially mental health in the workplace. I am very excited to be on this panel, with two, brilliant individuals who have been, really thinking about mental health and thinking about workplaces, for a really long time. So, so we'll kick off, by introductions, and I'll, first of all, call upon Harriet to just, basically introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you being, about your organization, etc.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Harriet Kariuki. I'm one of the founders of the AfriJob Network. We are a human capital startup based here in Nairobi, Kenya, and we are working with over 250 businesses to help them attract and as well as retain great talent. And one of the things that is really critical for that to happen is culture. So I've been really great advocates of company culture when it comes to not only attracting amazing talent, but also retaining the same. And that's what we have been focused on, which is how do we help employers have a strong value proposition so that they're able to attract the best of the best, whether that's technical talent or managerial hires, which, as you can imagine, especially if we have employers in the room, are some of the hardest people to find in these markets. So we operate across 12 plus markets in Africa. So I'm very much excited to get to share more about what employers think about when it comes to talent, specifically with a focus on culture, and also from professionals' point of view, because we work with both sides of the marketplace. So I'm very much looking forward to answering as many questions, but also supporting in this conversation around mental health in the workplace. Thank you so much, Tom, for having me.
Great. Thank you so much, Harriet, for that introduction, and looking forward to a lot of your insights shortly. Emily, if you want to also introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Emily Corrigan, and I'm a co-founder and COO at Shamiri Health, which is a platform that enables employers to provide really quality, affordable, and personalized mental health care to their teams. And I've also been working for a while at Shamiri Institute, which is our R&D side, as the director of innovation. So really excited. I know we'll get quite a chance to talk about mental health in the workplace through the rest of the session. So I'll just pass it back to Tom for now.
Great. We have, I've had panelists who couldn't join us for due to unavoidable circumstances, but she was really instrumental in helping put this panel together, and we'll be sharing some of our insights on our behalf as well. And that's Dr. Christine Wasanga, who teaches at the University of Kenyatta University. My name is Tom Osborne. I am the co-founder of Shamiri Institute. We are a data-driven organization whose mission is to develop and disseminate mental health interventions that can allow individuals to actualize their life outcomes. For me personally, this conversation is a very interesting and a very needed conversation, and I was very grateful to Sankalp and the team at Sankalp, who I think have made it a really crucial part of the agenda moving forward to really incorporate mental health and well-being in the workplace as part of the conversations around Sankalp. So for today, we'll be talking about two things in general. So first, we'll be talking about mental health in the workplace as a whole. What does it mean for employees to thrive, to have good well-being? How does mental health kind of impact and affect the work that they're doing? On the second hand level, we'll be talking about mental health from a leadership and a founder's perspective. Founders at many organizations, leaders in many organizations face a lot of stress that comes with one having to, quote unquote, manage the mental health of the workplace and the teams that they're leading in general, and also maintaining and managing their own mental health at the same time and at the same place. And founders, more particularly, also have a lot of challenges and problems that are very founder specific, things like, having a finite, running way, having to, raise resources, having to be, kind of like the person who perceives difficult and tough, news about the organization, and having to, kind of figure out what you can and cannot be able to share with your team, for example. So those are the two, kind of like high level conversations that we will have. We will divide today's panel into 3 parts. On the first part, which will take about 30 minutes, we'll set the stage. So basically what this means is we'll talk about, one, mental health in the workplace in general, why it matters. Harriet will, give us a lot of insights, why it matters from like, a culture perspective, from an HR perspective. Emily will give us a lot of insight on how it matters from like a productivity and a company efficiency perspective. And then the second part of setting the stage, we'll be talking more, about like, founders' anxiety or leadership anxiety. And this, as we will discuss, kind of like stems from, 2 different sides. On the one side, most founders, are mainly doing this for the first time, or most leaders are, kind of like doing this leadership roles for the first time. And there's a lot of, kind of like insecurity and anxiety that just comes from, kind of tackling something, from the first time. Then the second part of the conversation, we'll be talking about interventions. So what can we do to improve, mental health from a workplace, kind of perspective? We'll tap to Harriet to, give us, some insights, from some of the things she's seen different organizations that they work with as they help them build, kind of like the culture and their teams do. We'll, ask Emily to give us, kind of more concrete, kind of ideas and solutions that, we can implement post this Suncup Forum. And finally, we'll talk about future direction. So what next? What do we do after this conversation? At which point we'll open up the conversation to the rest of you to ask us questions if you have any. So I'll begin with you, Harriet. You have worked a lot with organizations. At AfriJob, you are a recruiting partner for organizations, and besides, just helping organizations hire talent, you really focus on helping them, kind of like build a culture around, kind of the organization. And in so doing, I know there's a huge, kind of emphasis on, workplace well-being and mental health well-being, kind of in the workplace. So the question, to you is, just through your experience over the last, 4 or 5 years at AfriJobs, why do you think mental health in the workplace matters, and why are you folks at AfriJob really emphasizing that as part of your culture development processes?
Thank you so much again, Tom, for setting the stage. Let me quickly share my screen. Definitely we'll talk more. I like how you broke it down in terms of what we can talk about as we go on. But there's great statistics around mental health. And of course, there's also more statistics around work, where humans spend more than 1/3 of their life working. And yet, as you can see, about 1 in 5 adults experience mental illness each year, but only 40% of them seek necessary help. So definitely, if you're an employer right now, there's a high chance you have over 5 employees. So one in those 5 adults is experiencing mental health issues, and the most likely they won't come to you to seek help. So, even from a setting the standard point of view, there's already that as an existing challenge within not only the social space, but also specifically within the workspace. And we've talked about culture, and this is why I really want to focus a lot of my conversation around, because culture is the product that a company is able to offer its employees as the customers. And when you think about customers, especially for a lot of us business owners, we really want to understand the challenges that the customers are facing so that we can build products that are ensuring that we are able to sustain those customers, retain those customers, even attract more customers. And the same strategies, the same investment we do on our customer, we don't do the same for our employees, where the most important part of the ecosystem that you're building as an employer or a business owner. And when you change that landscape and you start thinking about your employees as customers of your product, which is your culture, then you really will be spending a lot of time as a CEO, as a founder, as a HR professional within the organization, getting to really understand what your customers, AKA your employees, want. You'll be sending out surveys. You'll be having a lot of check-ins to understand what you can be able to provide better in terms of adding the value which your product, which is your culture, is able to provide. So once you start thinking about the culture as the product, then you can be able to now really think about product development, product optimization, and other things that can ensure that you're in line with understanding what your customers or your employees or even your potential candidates who will be coming to your company will be seeking for. And as you can see from this data from Oracle, there's a lot of conversations around mental health, especially in this day and age of COVID. As you can see, 76% of workers believe their company should be doing more to support the mental health of their workforce. So employees know for a fact that us as employers, we're not doing enough from the professional point of view, from the supporting with whatever way, whether that's financially, whether that's emotionally, whatever support they seek for as customers. Additionally, 78% of the workforce say the pandemic has negatively affected their mental health. And I know, Emily, you have a lot of statistics around that, especially when it comes to COVID, working from home, or the stress that is coming from just the current pandemic or the current situation or life that we're living in this day and age. And 85% of people who say their mental health issues are causing sleep deprivation, poor physical health, reduced happiness at homes, suffering, family relationships, or isolation from friends. And I am so sure anyone in this room we are very much well versed with what's happening on our day-to-day, and noting that, especially when work has gone remote and where work-life balance, it has never been there, but is non-existent, then it's very much important to start, especially as employers, to start thinking about what then some of these things that we're able to do. And I'm very much excited to be spending the next session to discuss some of the best practices we've seen from our own employers. So even from like a setting base in terms of the data that is out there, it shows that there's a lot of work that employers, that workplaces needs to focus on. And we come from a culture where even in our family unit, we don't spend a lot of time thinking about mental health. There's a lot of memes that can support that. And so you can imagine the next unit, which is your work unit, if we as employers are not able to set the standard, then we are definitely failing our community as a result, and a nation as a whole. So it's very important for us as employers to really start evaluating some of these best practices that we can be able to move into. So that's a little bit in terms of what's happening out there when it comes to what professionals are seeking for when it comes to the workspace or mental health.
Wow, thank you so much, Harriet. And I think kind of two things kind of just really stood up from what you said. I think one is kind of like leaders in organizations moving to think of their employees as their customers, and kind of trying to build a product which is just like the employee and workplace culture for their customers, around the needs of the customers. And I think that's kind of where mental health comes in, especially now where we are in this quote unquote age of productivity, where we are pretty much defined as organizations and as individuals with how much productive we are. So just to transition to Emily, from Shamir, just being a data-driven kind of organization with a huge kind of emphasis on like statistics and really trying to understand just the prevalence of mental health problems in the workplace. Can you just share with us some of the research around this issue?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, and thanks, Harriet, for that note on sort of culture. But yeah, I think we tend to think about mental health as sort of mental health challenges as sort of the presence of psychopathology, but it's also sort of a lack of wellness or a lack of flourishing. And, it's this sort of enormous cause of suffering that can be acute, but can also affect people sort of in a lot more subtle ways. So, reduced functioning, higher stress, loss of sleep, et cetera, et cetera. And those issues don't stop, just because you log in or you come to work or whatever you're doing these days. But about 84% of people actually report that at least one workplace factor actually negatively impacts their mental health. And about 76% of people report at least one symptom of mental health over the course of the year. And that spans, all organizational levels. And so, conversely, a positive workplace environment can also, have a positive impact on one's mental health. And then beyond sort of, how each individual employee is experiencing these challenges, there's also this huge problem of just lost productivity and reduced functioning sort of at the employer and societal level. So now, for example, mental health issues are actually the #1 cause of disability in sub-Saharan Africa. So that's more than, infectious diseases, for example. And, this is a problem that's estimated at about $2 trillion globally annually in lost productivity. And that's a figure that's expected to double by about 2030. So those are just sort of some of the broader figures. And I'm also happy to talk, Tom, about more specific ways that mental health issues can affect workplace functioning if you'd like.
Great, I think just, in the interest of time and because you want to spend some time talking about founders' anxiety, we could, maybe table that towards the end. But I think, just two things, stood up to me in terms of statistics that you presented. And one is just like the number, the economic figure in terms of lost productivity. I think the figure is like $2 trillion a year annually around the world. And in sub-Saharan Africa, I think that the number is $30 billion. That is a third of, I think, Kenya's GDP, is lost, in productivity by, companies and employers, specifically, due to mental health problems. And well, I remember in 2016, 2017, when they first started doing this research, and I was kind of still an undergrad at Harvard, and we were really thinking a lot about this. And the challenge for a long time had been that mental health was mostly thought about from like a health and psychiatry and clinical psychology perspective. But I think it was just this sheer, economic numbers that, like really prompted, people, including the World Bank, the economists, and, a lot of these, really more traditional organizations to start tackling this and thinking about this very seriously. It's just kind of transitioning to founders' anxiety. And this is, kind of something I'd want to, really tap into, kind of some of your lived experiences, Harriet. A lot of founders and by founders also, in this, conversation, also talking about like senior leadership, in organizations, especially in young or middle-sized organizations that are rapidly, scaling, face a lot of mental health related issues as a result, just as a direct function of the responsibility. On the one hand, for example, founders have to worry about existential things, like is this company going to exist beyond 3 hours? Decisions like who do we let go, who do we hire, and even sometimes importantly kind of just like anxieties about their own competencies, like are they good enough to like lead this team to tackle this problem. As a founder who's been building your own company, as well as kind of like working with other founders who are trying to build their own companies, what are your thoughts on this issue?
Thank you for raising this. And definitely this is a very important conversation because, as you said, a culture is literally the most important thing when it comes to ensuring better workspaces, and culture is shaped by the founders. So when you have founders who are not able to take care of their mental health, there's a high chance that employees won't as a result, because that's the system that has been built. So as you can hear, then I would be very much comfortable saying here that the more you see issues within the workplace, the more that is reflective of the founders when it comes to how they run things, but also how they come in terms of coming with resolutions around the same. So to answer your question, definitely that is something that is heavily talked about, but also not celebrated in terms of like ways that we can be able to build systems informally and formally around the same. But one of the things that has stood out, especially when it comes to the Kenyan ecosystem specifically, is something very formal, but yet very informal, like WhatsApp groups. You find a lot of founder-led WhatsApp groups, whether that's CTO WhatsApp groups, whether that's KE Tech WhatsApp groups. And this is a chance for you to really understand some of the challenges that people are facing, whether that's formally in terms of what systems can I be able to implement, or informally, where can I get the right help that I need. So that peer-to-peer network is something that is very much visible in this ecosystem. And I can say that has been very much helpful in my own journey, where I'm able to meet up with founders who have been doing business for more than 7 years, double my time, and I'm able to really understand some of the challenges I'm facing are things that they went through themselves, whether, as you said, whether that's no's from investors, whether that's even no's from people leaving your organization, whether that's even your own employees. So there's a lot that is happening, but one of the things that I can be able to comfortably say in this space is that there's great informal networks that founders should find themselves in, so that you're able to have monthly lunches with someone who can be able to really share their shared experience around the same. The second thing that I've seen that has been very pivotal in my own founder journey has been having a co-founder. And one of the things that I think it's talked about a lot of time is how determining the success of a startup is having more than one founders in an organization. There's a limit, of course. The more the founders, the more likely it is in terms of some of these challenges when it comes to decision making. But myself, I also have a co-founder, and it's helpful because then you're able to have someone you can be able to really share some of these challenges that you're facing, because you're facing a shared experience, and as a result, you're able to work with this particular experience together, specifically on both the emotional side, but also on actual just having those check-ins or conversations with each other. So I'd say it is a very important conversation that is worth talking about, especially from both the formal space, but informally, there's a lot of things that are happening, from peer networks to also just seeing more co-founder-led organizations or more founder-led organizations that are happening.
Yeah, and obviously, just to the extent, kind of in which you, Harriet and Emily, you're willing and comfortable to share, but I think as this is, kind of a space, where, we are talking, kind of about mental health, and also from a perspective of founders' anxiety. I think it may, be beneficial to, kind of share, a little bit of our own, kind of like personal experiences. For example, myself, I made the great mistake of, kind of starting my first startup when I was 18. I think in hindsight, it was, kind of a mistake. And I think the challenge, in this space, especially from an entrepreneur perspective, is we mostly tend to celebrate, quote unquote, the wins. We post on LinkedIn when, we get funding, or when we hire someone and we have a new, kind of like product. But I think the reality is this, kind of wins tend to be the exception, rather the exception rather than the norm. And I think I remember a time, kind of in my experience and journey as an entrepreneur, where we, had a pretty finite, kind of like runway, like I think about a 2-3 month runway, at the same time, also managing, kind of a team, of people who were more, like they were way better experts and more, kind of like experienced, kind of in, their roles and in their jobs than I was, but also kind of like looking, kind of at me, kind of like for leadership. And there's kind of, the first time, there's kind of this trade-off that, I faced, and I think a lot of us faced, where, we feel, that as a leader, as a founder, we have to, project strength, we have to, kind of be the, person who, has all the answers, can't really figure that out. And, not being willing to, kind of share, when we don't know, when we, are ourselves struggling, when, we can't, fully function because, we are really stressed about, getting money for, kind of post, 3 months. And I think, building, on the point that you said about kind of having this groups to discuss, I think maybe a new paradigm shift also needs to happen, where I think we need to be a little bit more open and vulnerable as, founders and leaders about, what we know, what we don't know, what we're struggling with, what we, what the landscape, kind of looks like, rather than the predominant culture of just sharing and celebrating wins. Because when I see Harriet raising money and doing all of these things, and I'm like, just like, what am I doing, etc. So Emily and Harry, do you have, kind of any of these experiences that you'd be, willing to share with the group?
Yeah, sure. And I think also just generally, I'll first mention that, this is one of the best ways of kind of creating a mental health supportive environment is by, leading with vulnerability and sort of honesty around what you're feeling. So, in COVID, for example, a lot of people have been stressed about having to lead while they're also managing their own mental health. And, one of the ways you can do that is just, when you start a meeting saying, I know we're all stressed, we're going to, talk about it for 5 minutes, and then we'll get to the sort of the content of today's agenda. But that aside, I think, personally, it has been a challenge being a first-time founder. I joined Shamiri Institute as Tom's second employee last year, and a year later, I'm kind of a co-founder and leader at this new venture. And I think, sometimes that comes with a lot of anxiety and a lot of frustration. And I think one of the things that's been really helpful for me is realizing that the sort of, startup above all mentality actually means me above all in a way, because, positive mental health and well-being is actually associated with, firm performance as well, along with, personal well-being. And so, one of the ways that I've approached that is prioritizing things like sleep and exercise, along with, just getting my work done. So I think that's, one of the things that can help. And I think also, it's important to acknowledge that these challenges can affect different groups of entrepreneurs differently. So, women, for example, leaders who have more employees, entrepreneurs by necessity, rather than opportunity. So I think, forming communities around those groups can also be one way to have kind of a support system when you're dealing with these challenges that doesn't necessitate sort of sharing them with your entire team if you're not comfortable with that.
Thank you so much for sharing your lived experience. Definitely to answer your question, Tom, yes, I think one of the things that I have seen and also seen my own portfolio companies, by that meaning founders as well, is really some of these challenges that they're going through. But the beauty is, as Tom and you highlighted in terms of honesty, I think one of the things that I love about this ecosystem is people are really brutally honest. It's like, I haven't slept in X number of days. I was just having a conversation with a friend who was telling me this is the first time he has left his house because he's building this product that should be launched very soon. So there's definitely a lot of honest conversation on what people are going through. But then the challenge is it's so normalized. As a founder, you should not be sleeping. As a founder, you should not even be seeing people. Like, that's why there's honesty with that aspect, that's normal. Like, it's almost a competition. I haven't slept for 10 more hours or whatever that competition looks like in terms of everyone's problems. So there's the good and the bad part of it, because when you're going to someone and telling them they haven't slept and then telling you, or me too, I haven't slept for the last 2 years, there's difference. There's that challenge that you're facing as a result. But I think that's the beginning, right? In terms of people are very honest and open about what they're facing, whether that's runway. Everyone I meet, they're always talking about how they're, less 1 month or whatever that looks like, especially from that perspective, which is something that we as funders, even my own organization, we're constantly racking our headspace in terms of how far we can take our team, because we are supporting families as a result. So that keeps us up at night in terms of what could happen if AfriJob is no longer there. How many families will I, as a result, not be able to help take care of? Those are some of the things that keeps me up at night. And then one of the things that have really been something that is critical when it comes to upskilling is not just managing, but managing managers. I think that's something that is very tricky, especially for first-time founders. Even founders who have never been managers, you're not only managing someone who is a salesperson, but managing a sales manager is managing several sales associates. So that is something that I'm currently going through at the moment, and I'm open to anyone who can give me feedback, insights on how I can manage managers, and hopefully very soon manage managers of managers, because that shows growth, but also means there's a lot of skills that we have to constantly upskill ourselves on. And that's something within our organization, we have a value around learning, which means we are doing a lot of learning and development, not only for employees, but also for founders, so that we're able to know how we can best provide not only the right type of experience for our managers, but also the people we are ourselves as well when it comes to running the organization. The third thing that has been very helpful is not working in the company, but working out of it. Like, you're not inside the day-to-day, the company is working for you. That mentality is different, because when you are working in the company, you're bound to be stressed. But when you're working outside the company, you're building processes that can scale, that don't need you. And as a result, you are now reducing that strenuous environment, which is work related. And that can help you as a result be able to be more productive. And that has been something that has been a change of mindset that I've also been implementing, so that you're not just running a small business, you're running a growth stage organization that is bound to scale. So that, again, is very mental, kind of like mindset related, that can help a lot of founders start really thinking out, thinking for themselves, but helping build an environment that can thrive without them.
Great, thank you so much, Emily and Harriet. I think we have 5 minutes before we transition to the next stage, and I know Emily and Dr. Asanga prepared, a little bit more information on this from a researcher, kind of statistics perspective. So I think maybe I'll just hand over to Emily to just, tell us, what the science is around founders' anxiety.
Yeah, sounds good. So I think I mentioned earlier that it's over 3/4 of people that report at least one symptom of mental health challenges across all organizational levels, but this average is actually slightly higher for entrepreneurs. And founders also report higher than average rates of psychiatric conditions, as well as co-occurrence of multiple mental health disorders. So this is sort of a huge problem that people are definitely not alone in. But these conditions, and also subclinical levels of symptoms, can influence everything from cognition and motivation and energy to self-concept and creativity in ways that actually influence business outcomes. So for example, symptoms associated with anxiety disorders can include risk aversion, which may make you less likely to try something new, or you may be less likely to engage with investors and customers when you're experiencing feelings of isolation during depression. So these are, crucial aspects of leading your business, just, being able to sort of take care of yourself. And, on the other hand, elevated mental health and well-being has been linked with persistence and grit, which can not only mitigate the effects of stress sort of physiologically, but also there's, this positive relationship between mental health and firm performance, like I mentioned earlier. And so, one of the interventions that you can sort of use to take care of yourself in this way is by developing self-awareness, especially when it relates to anxiety. And this is based on the idea that, if you understand more about yourself, you can make sort of better personal choices in the face of everyday stresses of the company, and also, for the company. And so one of the frameworks that you can use around, mindfulness and self-awareness is just first noticing. So bringing attention to, when these thoughts of anxiety or stress come up, and then actually labeling them in the present moment. So naming, what you notice every time you notice it. So for example, feeling annoyed at your co-founder, and you start to build these links between, okay, I'm feeling annoyed at my co-founder all the time, and it tends to come up in this sort of environment or this sort of context. And then sort of, practicing active choice making. So making an informed choice based on that self-reflection. And that can sort of help people change, habitual responses to stressful situations, and also lead to higher job satisfaction, stronger performance, higher innovation. So, really sort of ripples out through the culture of the organization as well.
Great, thanks, Emily. And just one thing that stood out to me is how some of these issues that you're saying about challenges to for example motivation and cognition, which are two really kind of important things for productivity. And as leaders, as founders, we judge ourselves and we judge our employees and our staff on just how productive they are. And so I think it's important to really think about mental health as you do that. As we transition, I think there's also one thing that I think may make sense for us to also just highlight, and that is some founders, some leaders are also struggling with mental health problems as they are leading organizations, and these mental health problems kind of affect and influence and shape, kind of how you are, as a leader. So just to give you an example of myself, so I have ADHD, and one of the feedback I normally get from my staff is that I don't seem interested when I'm having conversations, or like, like it seems that I'm moving from, like thought to thought, when I'm having conversations with them, or they'll be telling me something, then I respond with something completely, unrelated. I'm having conversations, one of other like team leaders also was someone who's struggling with like generalized anxiety, and she's just like a generally kind of like anxious person, and I think obviously these struggles affect and influence how she leads and she manages and she kind of works with people. And I think part of the self-awareness that Emily is talking about, on the one hand, is kind of being aware about our well-being in general, but on the other hand, leaders who are themselves, also, struggling, because it is inevitable. Like the prevalence rates of mental health problems are so high that at some point, there's a really high probability that if you have are not struggling with some mental health problems, someone in your team or leadership team, may be struggling with it as well. And so I think part of the awareness is also just realizing that. So we're going to transition to the second phase of our conversation today, which is, kind of focused on interventions. I think it is one thing to just talk about mental health, but I think, we also have to talk about what we can do about mental health. A really interesting anecdote that one of my college professors told me, which has stayed with me up to today, is often, mostly researchers, but also often in conversations like this, we tend to quote unquote count the bones in the or the skeletons in the locker, but we never really ask ourselves, how did they get there? How can we prevent more bones and skeletons from getting into the locker? So just trying to kind of like now pivot our conversation to interventions, and we'll begin kind of more generally, and I'm going to kind of bring you on board, Harriet. So part of the work that you do is, you work with organizations to build their culture. And, I have, through our Ashbury Institute, experience, some of this work that you do firsthand. And as you work with organizations to, as you said earlier, think about their employees as their customers, and think about the organization culture as the product that they're trying to sell to employees. How, from an intervention perspective, do you, infuse, this idea of mental health and well-being in the workplace? And I know you already had touched on some tiny bits of this earlier, but it'll be good to, get your thoughts on this.
Great. I'm excited to really share some of the insights I've seen in the market. So definitely the only challenge that we have when it comes to implementation is that we tend to, just use buzzwords. We're very good at that. It's like, mental health is a new buzzword. Previously, we're still battling with diversity, but mental health is the new buzzword when it comes to the workspace. So there was this conversation that was happening on Twitter that trended, depends on which part of the Twitter world you're in, but it was really around people talking about their best employers and some of the policies that they have. And one of the things that I'm going to bring it up is because we did a survey with our top professionals in our database, and one of the things that we asked is like, what do you care about when it comes to making a decision whether you want to join a company or not? And 97% of the respondents said culture, and then 50% were talking about salaries. So even when you're comparing salaries versus culture, it shows a lot about where people really want to invest their time when it comes to professionals making a decision on which companies that they want to join in. So definitely the biggest thing here is that it's not enough to just come up with the latest app and provide it to your employees. You really need to change up the entire culture and build systems that not only saying what you do, but actually what you actually do. And some of the best practices so it's a list that I found on the thread. I copy pasted some of this so that you can see, and it's based on this thread. So the thread was name any employee friendly policy in your, or any startup, large organization that is super helpful, really cool. Example, unlimited sick leaves, work from anywhere, no meetings on Friday, etc. And there was this comment that talked about mental health leave, mental health retreat sponsored by company, super inclusive leave structure, work from anywhere. and someone responded, what is the name of the company? I need off just for my mental health, and it's impossible to do that given the work pressure. And just like that, they were able to share a little bit about the company and were willing to do introductions. This is really telling you everything you need to know about culture. Culture is what people are attracted to. It can help you hire faster. It can bring in referrals. It can ensure people are very excited to share some of the things that they're getting from the organization. So there was a lot of responses, and these are the core responses that I found. I'll share the same with you. But the future of workplace mental health demands culture change with more vulnerability. You talked about, Emily, that compassion and sustainable ways of working. And noting that I work with founders and entrepreneurs, of course, the basic challenge has always been the cost-benefit analysis. It's like, I can't just offer a generous leave policy. Everyone will take those unlimited leave policy, and then I'll not be having people showing up for work. So those are some of the cost-benefit analysis that I find a lot of founders thinking around when they are building a culture package. But these were some exciting things. So there were unlimited sick leave that people are talking about. Some of the people said that every year they had 999 leave days. It's like 3x the number of days, which shows that there are companies out there who just want their employees to feel heard, and they don't have to go through a lot of bureaucratic processes to get leaves, leaves determined by this employer. There was also period leaves for women employees, no question asked. Mental health leave, again, that's something that was coming up over and over again. Health policies, including mental health plus mental health support calls. So a lot of people wanted free therapy or talked about free therapy or therapists on call or reimbursement when they go for therapy sessions. And there was also personal expense card with monthly budget for fitness, reading, any productivity around mental health. So like a $50 package for you to do gym membership, new book, poetry classes, etc. Again, others got subscription for Headspace, Come Up, etc., or even coffee and meal reimbursement. Others had wellness holidays, whether that's the first or the last Friday of every month, especially in months with no public holiday. So you get like a 3-weekend package and no work WhatsApp group. There's just people, that's something that a lot of professionals have said they don't want to mix their work life with their life. So if you're an employer with still using WhatsApp, it's about time. Home's office setup budget as percentage of the cost of company. Most of us are working from home. Your employees might not have a good chair or, just like a setup. I know a lot of employers offer Wi-Fi packages, phone, etc., but there are also other employers who are providing a home office setup. Mandatory birthday leaves, that's also something we offer in our organization, where if it's your birthday, it's your holiday, go celebrate, right? That's something that you can also think around when it comes to building something around mental health, but also just wellness in general. Less meetings, more focused work. I've seen a lot of people have this no meeting on Fridays or no meetings on Mondays, just so that you're ensuring that people are just focused on work, because there tends to be a lot of these meetings that should be emails. So that's something that a lot of people just feel like it's something that a lot of organizations should implement. And fostering deeper connections. This is something that is very important. Regular check-ins that make time for the question, how are you? And then it's followed by, how can I help you? As I highlighted, culture is the product, and you want to constantly just update that product. So how can I ensure that you're having a very good employee experience at AfriJob? What else should we be doing as AfriJob? Just taking a lot of those insights on one-on-ones, make them bi-weekly. If you're an employer, it can help you just start understanding what you can be able to build to your organization, because there might be other things that are not in this list that can help just the general understanding that your employees are feeling heard, because that's the most important thing. Is one of the things that is interesting is customers leave your organization, especially from a product perspective, when they feel that they're not heard. And not even because the percentage was like 10% of the customers died, and then 90% of them felt that they were not heard. The same with employees. Employees leave the company when they feel that they're not listened to. So how do you ensure that you have ears on the ground to just listen to what employees are looking for and come up with implementation? You don't have to implement 80% of them. You can implement them on a phased out approach so that you're able to just ensure that there's that loop factor when it comes to implementation. So these are some of the things that I would definitely recommend you all to go to that tweet. You can find a lot of more sub-tweets out there, but definitely employees are looking out for more than salary packages. They want spaces where they can be able to take advantage of more perks, whether that's, as we see, productivity, learning and development, opportunities for them to be their best versions. And as long as you're building this within your policies and it's the lived experience, then it's bound to change the culture. So this is where then financially you have to think outside the box. partners like Shamiri are able to provide some of these tools, for instance, or when you have, partners who offer, say, food packages, Kune, or whatever that type of organization looks like, then you have this entire ecosystem that is feeding from each other, from every entrepreneur out there, so that you're building this amazing ecosystem as a result. So that's some of the things that are out there. Again, as you can see, this is what makes people attracted to join your organization and stay within your organization and even refer others to join the company. So as a result, how do you ensure that you're implementing them on a monthly basis or whatever that type of basis looks like, so that it's part of the true lived experience of the organization? So that's what I would like to share and wanted to share for this particular conversation.
Great, thank you so much, Harriet. And I think the thing that stood out to me listening to you is just this idea of being heard, and feeling valued because just someone within the organization hears what you're saying. And I think for me, why it stood out is it reminds me a lot, kind of the work that we do. So we work a lot with high school students, and we try to kind of like build mental health and wellness kind of like solutions for high school students. And one of the things we've realized in the course of this work is the core problem is, high school students also don't feel being they're heard, right? And then when you talk to teachers, the teachers also don't feel, that the parents and the, students are listening to them, and the parents also, kind of feel the same. And also in the workplace, employees, as you're saying, like one of those key things is being in a work environment, where you feel heard. And I think, that reminds me as well of this example from this book called The Culture Code, which I'd highly recommend. And basically one of these examples, most of these, really, kind of like successful organizations at their core, they've been able to create a culture, where everyone, within the organization, feels heard and feels that, even though whatever they say, isn't done, but they feel like they, actively contributed, to that conversation. So moving, to Emily, once again, from just like a research perspective, like, what are some of those, interventions or resources or tools that we can, think about to, improve mental health in the workplace?
Yeah, great. I also just wanted to point out from the wonderful list that Harriet already shared that not only are these sort of about being heard, but they're also about, they go beyond a workshop and they go beyond just treating psychopathology to actually promote, universal wellness on an everyday basis. And, about 91% of employees now believe that a company's culture overall should support mental health. So, as Harriet's saying, this is about equally as important as salary to people these days. And I also just, before I go on, wanted to highlight some of the benefits that, actually having these policies can bring to employers. So workers who, feel supported with their mental health are not only about 25% less likely to report symptoms of mental health conditions, but then, employers are also going to see the benefits of that. So employees are less likely to underperform. They're less likely to miss work, more likely to feel comfortable talking about mental health at work, more likely to be satisfied in their job and sort of have intentions to stay at the company, more positive views of the company and its leaders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it can also, help employers support and foster diversity and equity and inclusion. And there are a lot of sort of emerging links between providing mental health support and then attracting and retaining diverse talent. So, I think I'm happy to share, Tom, sort of what we've been working on at Shamiri Health as well, which is sort of geared towards intervening in this area, if that's helpful.
Yeah. So I think just, before you do that, I think just one point that I'd also just love Harriet to react on a little bit is this idea, that you've mentioned, Emily, which is moving away from only thinking about this from, founder's anxiety or a depression or I am struggling with this mental health perspective, to how to create this culture of like flourishing, like how can I seize the day and, be, the best version of myself for today? How can we create, an organization that, people look forward to, working for on a day-to-day basis and can, flourish and be, the best versions of themselves? Is this something that, has, come up as well in some of this work and conversation that you've been having at AfriJob?
Definitely. And that's exactly where we have been focused our entire efforts on, because a lot of these things you only know when you speak to someone in that organization. Like most of the things that you find in a job description are salaries. Most of the time you don't even find it, as well as your responsibilities. But some of these aspects of, we have, for instance, in AfriJob, as I highlighted, we have birthday offs for people within the team. We provide insurance coverage that we're very much pushing for mental health as well. So definitely some of these things are things that you experience within the organization, but it's not showcased in your job description. So one of the things that we're offering our company partners is to tell this story around all the 360 degrees view of the organization, some of the benefits that you get, whether that's free lunches or monthly dinners that you offer, or some of these aspects that really showcase happiness, because happiness index is really a variable and people have different definition of happiness, but showing how some of these things bring in some of this impact, whether that's, we are purely remote, but we have monthly sessions where everyone comes in and we have karaoke nights. And we have, for instance, that's something that we do at AfriJob, which is fun because we get to see people's talent beyond just doing amazing job as recruiters. But those are things that need to be more focused on when it comes to not only recruitment, but also retaining talent. Recruitment is one part of the solution we're offering, which is how do we help your company become more attractive by providing content or building content around this aspect of what being an AfriJobber looks like, or AfriJobian looks like. And then the second part is retention. At the end of the day, culture is what you do on a daily basis. And if we're telling potential customers or potential recruitees that we offer this and we don't actually offer it, then that's a lie. You're building your entire organization under a lie, which is something that a lot of employers do out there. They have this beautiful page on their website where they talk about some of the incredible things they do, and then behind the scenes, it's never implemented. It's just one workshop a year, or whatever whatever the implementation around the mental health conversation is all about. So we go to the extra mile, which is now really getting into the day-to-day and building surveys and sessions with employees to really understand whether whatever you're promised, was it actually delivered? Because those are the feedback loops that say you as a manager, when you go to talk to your, when you're talking to your managee, they're not going to tell you some of these things that they fear of being fired. But then they can be able to talk to us as a recruiter or an external partner, so that we're able to just help you build or even be more than what you highlighted in terms of your employer value proposition. So it's both on the attracting side, building content that ensures that we're able to tell the story beyond the salary packages. And then the secondly part is actually implementing it by getting that feedback loop from employees, so that we're able to just not only create this facade of what the organization is all about, but actually doing it on a day-to-day. If you're saying you offer unlimited leave days, how do employees take up those leave days? Do you have sessions where you have therapy? What are all those actual sessions that are happening, so that we're able to just return this information as part of our culture audit processes? So to answer your question, definitely AfriJob, we not only practice what we preach by creating policies for employees, but also we help our portfolio companies or our founders to really showcase their culture, but also implement it, so that they are not only attracting the best talent, but also retaining top talent as a result.
Yeah, and it's a shameless plug. We've been working with Harriet, for the last 1 year, and she actually puts your feet to the fire to make sure you do more than just develop these policies. So just go back to you, Emily. You quote unquote left us at Shimmery Institute to go and work on solving this problem of trying to help companies build mentally healthy workplaces and just improve workplace flourishing and thriving. Do you maybe just want to talk a little bit about that and about what you've been working on?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to share my screen. So with all of this context in mind, and Yeah, so with all of this context in mind, this is sort of how we came up with the idea for Shamiri Health. And as Tom mentioned, I was at Shamiri Institute. While over there, we were sort of the most productive research group that's focused on mental health in the global south. So, we've done several gold standard clinical trials with a few thousand participants and published several journal articles and leading publications. And sort of what came out of all of this R&D and sort of contextual knowledge was sort of these three pillars of a mental health care solution that would be effective for the context. So first, it needs to be integrated. And so that means to us, being able to be available and accessible where people would normally seek their care. So I think all of us on the call probably receive insurance, our medical care through our insurance provider or through our employer. So any sort of effective mental health care treatments need to be integrated with existing systems, such as these, or wherever anyone else is sort of seeking care. Second, it needs to be personalized. So, a lot of times people are just referred to an expert psychiatrist. They don't have a lot of sort of contextual data or information about this person and what they've been experiencing over time. A lot of times these treatments are sort of imported from other contexts as well, and sort of these one-size-fits-all solutions. And so, we also aim to give people a lot more personalized and directed care that's actually relevant and effective for them and for what they're experiencing. And then finally, it needs to be affordable. And cost is, one of the main barriers to care. People spend about 4 times, the total cost of a session for a full course of psychotherapy, which is about a 10-session treatment, is about 4 times what people spend annually on their total annual healthcare spend. So it's just prohibitively expensive for many people. And so this is where we came up with Shamiri Health. So what does this actually look like? So Shamiri Health is an enterprise platform that enables employers to provide care for their employees through an annual subscription. And so this is sort of based on 3 components. The first being a interactive check-in process. So people, access the app, they set up a profile, and they can immediately start, an interactive and intelligent check-in. Then we take that data and sort of run it through an AI-driven precision care algorithm that looks at both symptom type and severity. And then we actually match you with a personalized treatment plan. So I'll go into these in a little bit more detail. So the first part, the check-in process. These are based on standard psychometric tools that we validated and have been using in Kenya for several years. They intelligently update based on user history, but also they're tailored. The types of questions we ask are tailored to the person's context. So not only their own personal history, but even employer level data, regional data, et cetera. And people can access these at all times. So you can log in the morning, create your little check-in, and sort of get your insights and go about your day. And then we also integrate these check-ins with smartphone health data. So we take this sort of more comprehensive picture of how the user is doing, and we turn it into a well-being sort of plan for them based on our precision care algorithm. So in that process, we look at symptom type and symptom severity. So is this person dealing with a subclinical or low grade level of kind of daily stress? We can match you with an intervention for that. Or does this person need sort of a more intensive treatment for substance abuse, for example? We can also match you with a treatment plan for that. So what does that look like? So not only do we provide sort of these daily insights and information about your overall mood on several different dimensions and overall wellness on several different dimensions, but then we also give you an opportunity to actually access treatment and care on a daily basis through the app. So that could look like anything from, in the first instance where you have low grade anxiety, for example, we may match you with an evidence-based gratitude exercise, which has been shown to reduce anxiety symptoms and can be done just right there on your phone. Like I was talking about earlier with this sort of self-awareness process, it can also prompt you for, a mindfulness or self-awareness exercise if you're feeling stressed. But then in sort of at a higher level of care and treatment, we can also actually match you with a provider. And so these are all providers that are within our network and are, certified through the KCPA. And so this is a, sort of provider model that we've developed over the past several years at Shamiri Institute. And what this enables us to do is match people with the right type and level of care for them. So like I said, people are often matched with, a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but maybe, they really just need some support on being able to develop a growth mindset in their work life. So in that instance, we would match them with a supervised lay provider. So someone who can lead, a group peer counseling session that doesn't need to have, all of the same training and expertise as a psychiatrist. And then sort of moving up the ladder, we could match you one-on-one with, a counseling psychologist, or match you with a psychiatrist who can help with sort of more severe clinical issues. And so this allows us to bring the cost of care down to about 20 times cheaper than alternatives, with sort of the same level of effectiveness for depression and anxiety symptoms, which is what we were looking at the time, as a full course of traditional psychotherapy. So that's just a little bit about what we're doing at Shamiri Health. I'll just leave off there, but I will also just mention that we're happy to provide a discount on an annual contract of about 3 months for SandCalc participants. So I'll just drop my email in the chat if anyone would like to take advantage of that deal, and just send me an email saying that you were here at this panel.
Yeah, I think we are really sad to lose you, Emily. But I think doing the work for employees as well in the workplace is that's really important. So I think just to move on to the next part of our conversation, which are future directions. We've had really great conversations at the beginning about mental health in the workplace, founders anxiety, what it is, why it matters, etc. We've talked about interventions from like the simple ones. That Harriet was telling us can embed within our culture to Shamiri Health that Emily is working on. So the big question is kind of like what next? What are the future directions for us as a community to really move this conversation beyond as Harriet had said, a buzzword beyond like buzzwords like we're trying to foster diversity and inclusion, and trying to foster culture that values mental health and well-being in the workplace. And I will give you, Harriet, a chance to briefly share about it. But I'd also love to at this point start to bring on board the group as well, the all of you who are joining us in here today as well, to share what your thoughts and opinions are on what you think the future directions are, and maybe the folks in SandCalc can help us facilitate that. But in the meantime, over to you, Harriet.
Sure. So one of the things that I really want to be cognizant around is the fact that it's really hard to break a system, fight a system. So therefore, it's important for every stakeholder involved to be part of the intervention. And I know this because one of the things that we always talk about when it comes to the human capital space is that we ask questions like, who is responsible for training our employees? Is it universities? Is it employers? And this has brought in the government. There's all these different stakeholders, multi-level or multi-layered stakeholder approach when it comes to upskilling people, right? So definitely when it comes to mental health, it's similarly, mental health and wellness, if you look at it as a skill, first and foremost, if you look at it as you're seeing an opportunity when it comes to just ensuring that we're able to take advantage of some of this lost value of productivity and economically, then it becomes a national issue, which also becomes a county level, goes to the company and goes to all these different players within the ecosystem. So bringing it home when it comes to the founder space and the tech ecosystem, given that this is where a lot of, even where I come from, or most of my partners and portfolio companies are from, there's different layers. When you first and foremost, when you share that, healthness or mental healthness should be involved when it comes to performance reviews, for instance. It's very hard for a professional, not even a professional, but a manager who is graded by the KPIs of their team, as well as the entrepreneur whose investors are asking for performance when it comes to revenues, as well as the person who is giving money to the investor. So there's all these different variables that are involved, which is very important for us to take into consideration around. So the first and foremost thing I would say, just like we have a diversity index when it comes to 50-50 rule, whether that's in gender or the different aspects of just diversity and inclusion is all about the D&I. It's also very important for us to come up with variables that we can also test out. I know happiness index is very far off with all these different variables, but I feel like people like yourself, Shamiri Health, should help us come up with variables that can be implemented across the board. So that when me as a manager, I am going through my performance review with my team, I'm not only looking at how much revenue they were able to bring on board, there are other variables that I'm able to look into, whether that's how many leave days did you take, whatever that equation will be like when it comes to understanding the employee's wellness. And from that part, as a manager, I'm also based on the same when it comes to my own wellness, when it comes to me telling my performance of my team. Similarly, when a founder is going to the investor, I know there are a lot of investors in this conversation as well. Not only are you asking me which markets did I expand into, or all these different aspects, you're also checking some of these metrics around mental healthness or wellness within the workplace. And similarly, across all these different ecosystems, we're able to track some of these metrics. So to answer your question, I will definitely say here and loud that it's hard to just change some part of the system. It's very important for us to look at it from a macro level. And some of these indicators or health and wellness indicators can be a good place for us to start off with. So that then we're able to implement them across KPIs, implement them across performance, and all these different aspects that can even help us, a shareholder, to decide which company they will invest in, even a customer to decide which company they will buy the good and service from, because of some of these indicators of wellness. So I'll definitely say that's a great opportunity for us to take advantage of and use that as an opportunity to change not only the culture, but also the entire dynamic around the ecosystems that we live in.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear what you, the audience, think. And so please feel free to share your thoughts, comments, questions on the chat. And we'd love to get the conversation flowing that way as well. On your point about indicators, Harriet, I think we have indicators, and like Human Institute, we come mostly having looked at this from a research and data-driven kind of like perspective. And one of these indicators is this idea, which in the literature call it a flourish index, and so. In this flourish index, we look, kind of at 5 different, elements which you think are very vital to, success in general and also just in the workspace. And one is the life satisfaction and just general happiness. The second is mental and physical health, because obviously both your physical and mental health are really, connected to your overall well-being. The third part of this is this idea of like sense of purpose, or kind of like life meaning. Most of us, we do what we do because we think it, or we want to do things which give us some purpose and meaning kind of to a life. The other one is close social relationships, so family, becomes quite important. Friends become quite important. Social relationships also really, important part of this index. And then there's also this idea of character strengths or virtues, those people who, have a character strength like wisdom. There's some who have character strength like justice, and in the workplace, these character strengths play, differently. So for example, someone who values justice, maybe, for example, the most vocal person in an organization about issues around diversity and inclusion, right? Whereas someone who maybe has a different character strength or a different value may, kind of not prioritize that as well. But I think I do agree with you that at the system level, we also need to have, from funders to, entrepreneurs also is starting to value, creating this kind of organizations. There is one question here from a Eunice Mathu for Harriet, which is if you're a small startup, and the reality of small startups is we don't have enough resources, so with budget constraint, how do you access funding for mental health care for your employees, or how do you work towards promoting a healthy work culture with these financial constraints of working in a resource limited startup?
That's a very good question. And then that's why one of the things I highlighted when I started that some of the programs that are being done, that the only challenge is always that cost benefit analysis, and which drives me to 2 points. The first one is when you're negotiating contracts with employees, most of the reasons why we have seen a lot of conversations where an employee would say they will not join that company because there wasn't an equivalent amount for their insurance coverage, which is always a reason why people leave the negotiation stage. More than 50% of candidates leave the negotiation stage because there wasn't a very good or significant amount provided for their insurance coverage. So that is something that we have noticed even when it comes to negotiations. Professionals are not just looking for great gross packages. They also want to know some of these incentives like insurance. And one of the questions that we're always trying to help them understand is that, would you take, say, 200K a month versus take 130, and then this other amount is like being provided as part of like your insurance coverage? And most of the people will tend to take the latter because there's this aspect of just the company is there for me, and the fact that this is more of a longevity. Because startups, a lot of people argue that startups, especially from professionals, there is a risk factor of them joining, and you don't know whether your company will fall in the next 1 or 2 months, which is very much possible. So having insurance creates that longevity for the organization, for this particular professional to commit to. And that has been something that has helped a lot of our own professionals land into exciting deals or exciting companies as a result. Now, the challenge with that is definitely budget-wise, and I will definitely put a plug in here, because one of the companies that we use for even our own employees, it's WorkPay. WorkPay is a great platform for not only when it comes to distribution of wages to your salaried employees, but also they have a package where they're able to help you negotiate for an employee deal. There's an SME deal, there's a corporate deal. SME for employees less than 15, for companies with less than 15 employees, where you get a good package that you can be able to not just pay just one massive chunk of money, but you're able to pay per month. And they're able to even offer a loan kind of interest type of affair, so that you're able to cover some of this month-on-month payment. So what I'm trying to say here is that not only is it important for you to have it as part of your attractive package, but there's options out here like WorkPay, which is helpful because it's a HR fintech, where you're able to have access to not only wages for your own employees, but also some of these packages and add-ons as healthcare. But then the challenge with that is where I'm also excited for Shamiri, is that even most of our comprehensive healthcare, even in Kenya, they don't have mental health. The biggest coverages are maternity and outpatient. So there's also not a lot of investment even within our own insurance providers when it comes to mental health. So this is where places like Shamiri would be great, because I'm so sure, as you said, you have all this list of potential partners that you work with. But that is one of the plugins, I would say, from the fact that it's not only very essential when it comes to negotiating with your candidates, but also the fact that you can also access some of these financial instruments that can help you pay for an SME package through companies like WorkPay, which is doing a great job when it comes to just ensuring that employees are not only paid on time, but also they have other benefits such as this when it comes to insurance covers.
Yeah, and Eunice, I'd love to, if you're interested, have a longer conversations about this, because when we started working at Shamiri Institute, this question that you are posing is, the question that was at the heart of the work that we were doing. Like mental health is expensive. Kind of doing this is expensive, not only from an employer perspective, but just as a person perspective. And there is this broad literature in the clinical psychology and psychiatry literature that shows that actually simple, low-cost interventions, can really, work and can really, be scaled up. And even in the workplace, very simple, kind of like interventions or programming, that doesn't always involve in paying any money, can, really, really help. I think one example of these interventions is just having meetings, for example, in a cycle, where, everyone can see each other, where you kind of don't, have a hierarchy, etc., giving everyone kind of an equal chance to, kind of like speak and be heard and be listened to. These kind of small things, can also help, like really improve, the mental health space. And I know also, Emily, as part of your work for employers, there's also a huge, kind of emphasis on really low cost, simple, interventions. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So sort of building on this research that Tom is referencing, they're called WISE interventions. So typically very simple, brief interventions that target, one specific cognitive process, but that can have sort of outsized impacts on the way that we see ourselves and our place in the world. And so that's sort of the science that many of our digital tools are based on, for example. So these are very simple things, such as, thinking about 3 things that you're grateful for, that over the long term can actually really add up to more sort of fundamental changes in how you're experiencing the world. And so that's, sort of one element of the platform. And then the other element that's meant to significantly bring down costs is this tiered provider model that I mentioned before. So matching people with actually the right level of care for them doesn't always mean, seeing an expert psychiatrist or psychologist. And so by using tools like peer counseling and group counseling, we're able to bring down the cost of sessions and offer a tool that's actually very affordable for many enterprises. And the per month fee comes to about 700 shillings per user. So, we've done as much as we can to sort of bring that cost down and make sure that people are accessing quality care for much cheaper. I think, the average cost of a standard session is between 2,000 and 5,000 shillings for just one session. And through the Shamiri Health platform, you can get, a package that includes 10 sessions for just 700 shillings a month.
Great. And I think one of the comment from the chat from Stephen, which I think really stood out to me, is creating this, culture of honesty and authenticity around, these discussions, and kind of trying to, kind of bring that more beyond just, beyond just, these kind of like forums to, kind of outside, this forum. So Harriet, I think this is your day-to-day job, helping companies think about these things. So as, for all of us here, do you have ideas on how we can, continue to foster a culture of like authenticity and honesty around this kind of conversations?
Sure. So even from like a very doable thing, one of the things that we do when we are bringing in candidates on board, especially to work at AfriJob, is we have a culture session. And on our culture interviews, some of the things that we really want to understand is how our employees value different things. So some of the questions that we ask is, how would you rate the following? And we have impact, work-life balance, money, title, and other specific features that can help us know where most of our employees stand when it comes to their own values specifically. So even from that point of view, then it's from a very much, as you're bringing in candidates or bringing in employees on board, it's very important for you to start filtering or just getting to understand the sense of people who are joining your organization. If transparency and vulnerability is an important value system, then how are you able to assess for some of these things before people join the organization? Because you might say you care about integrity, but then integrity involves a lot of hard conversations. And if in that assessment, someone is not able to have hard conversations or vulnerable conversation, you know for a fact that this person will not fit within your organization. So even from a start, definitely how you filter or how you interview your candidates will be very important, so that you're able to just ensure that there's not only just a culture fit, but a culture add when it comes to the candidates who are joining the organization. So that's the first and most important thing that I would say that is very much achievable for every single employer who has candidates or who is trying to really ensure that there's that transparency, honesty, and some of these virtues or values within the organization. Now, the second part is where now the retention conversation comes in. Just as we talked about, how you are constantly on top of your customers' success. We have a lot of client success roles, even where you're, going back to your customers, having feedback sessions, whether that's quarterly or even some of our partners monthly, so that you're able to understand, would you work with AfriJob ever again, Shamiri, for instance? And then Shamiri is like, no, we will not work because 1, 2, 3, 4. Then those sessions helps you understand how you can better serve your customer. Similarly, that's very much important to incorporate within your organization, where you have a lot of those feedback conversation. And this should not be, very much heavily formalized, where someone feels like they will be penalized when they don't speak the truth, or when they speak some of these aspects that are, again, that's already against the value around vulnerability. So that is also very much important when it comes to having a lot of these feedback sessions. It can both be internal, where you're having managers having bi-weekly check-ins with the employees, so that they're able to just understand how you're doing and what can we do better. So one of the things that we do, I know a lot of you employers have probations and review sessions. One of the things that we do monthly or check in within our employees is to just understand, would you choose AfriJob again? Or what should we do to ensure that you stick around AfriJob? And those are questions that we don't ask. We only ask during our exit interviews when people have decided to leave. So what can we do to make your stay here at AfriJob better during those monthly sessions or those quarterly sessions can help you understand where your candidates are at when it comes to their expectations and some of the things that they're looking forward towards from a survey point of view. Alternatively, you can have external people like us. We are recruiters, meaning that professionals love us. They can't wait to have us know about them, so that we can help them get a new job, which means then they'll be very honest, whether that's things around salaries, whether things around toxic workplaces. We're able to really get some of these insights that it will be harder for an employer or someone who's just doing kind of like that managerial role to get insights around. So then we're able to really help you know where your employees stand when it comes to them either being interested in being part of the organization, or even from value add in ways that you can be able to better kind of like shape things around the values that you care about. So to answer your question, it's dual folded. The first one is really around attracting. So what type of people are you already attracting into your organization, and how can you filter some of this value and fitness that you feel will not be relevant within your organization? So that means that you have to understand what values you care about. And then secondly, retaining. So what are those in sessions that you're having so that you're constantly on top, knowing exactly where everyone in your organization stands in terms of whether they're interested in being or leaving the organization. Again, that's you can use either your own internal managers or external providers like AfriJob in this case, where we're able to really help you have that culture audit and have an understanding of whether you actually are a vulnerable environment or you're transparent business. So those are the two things that I would say are very much critical, but they will, as a result, help you build this product around what you care about as an organization.
Great. So I think we're going to, kind of begin wrapping up, the conversation, and feel free to type into the chat, any, questions, comments, and thoughts that you have. And, kind of just to, come full cycle and then, give Emily and Harriet a chance to also, kind of share last thoughts. Over the last, few years, this conversation about, mental health has, really, kind of blown up on a personal level for a lot of us, and for us, as professionals, also on a professional level. COVID-19 has, really affected employees in the workplace, in a way that most of us have never seen. Work from home. Now people back, some work to working away from home. A lot of loss and struggles that most of us went through like over the last few years. But I think the great thing about this is it has allowed us to arrive at this moment of reckoning that allows us to maybe emerge and build back better, and really think about building human organization that people want to work for, enjoy working for. Because I think if we really focus on that and really emphasize that, the science tells us that the benefits are improvements in productivity, improvements in outputs, and all these other things that we really need to make our organization a better place. So there seems to be one more question on the chat, and this question is, as an employer going through mental health challenges, what can you do? How can you take care of yourself, especially in the seed stage when you really haven't figured out what you're doing? Please let us know what resources can be used without incurring any costs. Great. So I think Shanice, I will maybe tap in Emily, but I think this kind of taps into the question that we had earlier, which is that there are all these interventions within, like the psychological literature that are very simple, mostly cost nothing, and willing to really, affect, the bottom line of, especially very early stage seed companies. And we'd be happy to talk to you privately about this and have a much longer conversation. But Emily, if you want to answer Shanice's question.
Yeah, sure. So I think I shared a brief framework earlier that I'll just build upon. So, for example, when you're feeling these feelings of stress and anxiety, noticing and labeling can be the most important sort of first steps. So noticing the patterns and sort of actually naming them. Keeping a journal related to that process is sort of a great way to develop awareness around it, and just paying attention to how it shows up for you and when. And then the second sort of part of that framework that I'll expand upon is actually taking action on it. So controlling what you can. So whether that's, structuring your time, focusing on, critical work first and taking small, meaningful actions, and sort of, if you can, tabling big questions for when you feel less stressed or can get more input, for example. But then also coming up with techniques for situations that you cannot control. So finding like a mindfulness technique that works for you, for example, to ease sort of more acute anxiety or feelings of stress. So one thing that you can do is just focus on breathing, or focus your attention to something tangible. So one thing I do is just throughout the course of the day, every 1 to 2 hours, I take 2 to 3 minutes to just rub my hands together. And it sounds weird, but I do find that, just bringing my mind back to sort of something tangible, or, holding a cold object and experiencing, what does that actually feel like in your body, and bringing your attention to that can sort of make everything else fade to the background. So, those for sort of more acute times of stress, or just building those into your day as well. And then finally, sort of limiting the impact of, this stress and anxiety on your leadership. So proactively, setting yourself up to make good choices when experiencing anxiety, knowing that you can't always, delay decision-making until you're in a better frame of mind. So some strategies are just, finding a trusted advisor, think about projecting warmth along with just strength. So, you don't have to necessarily always just grit your teeth through it, but you can also, acknowledge your feelings, but then move forward in the conversation. And just understanding that, you can model taking care of your mental health without people losing confidence in your competence. And, also building a support system around that.
Great. Thank you so much, Emily. I think we kind of have 2 more minutes left. And Mark Garvin asked a very quick question about how to grow emotional intelligence amongst employees. And I think the call to that lies in self-awareness and kind of giving employees opportunities for self-awareness. But as I told you on the chat, I'd love to talk more about this. So I think I'll just give Harriet like 10 seconds to give us parting words, and then Emily.
Again, thank you so much, everyone, for coming to this very exciting conversation. As we said, this should not be a buzzword. This should be something that we do and implement on a day-to-day basis. But the values and the impact of the same really outgrows the costs by so far. One of the things that we always measure for is the cost of losing a hire. The cost of attrition is very high compared to the cost of retaining a candidate. So if retaining a candidate means ensuring that they have Shamiri Health app, ensuring that they have all these exciting packages that you're able to offer, you really are going to retain a candidate for more than 6 months, which will be beneficial for your organization if it's a critical role, like a sales role, for instance, which directly brings in revenue to the business. So what I'm trying to say here is that culture is very crucial for you. Again, the culture is your product as a founder, as an entrepreneur, and your customers are your employees and potential candidates. So how best can you be able to provide and build a product around that? That's your job as a co-founder. And your product or your culture really mirrors what you do. And therefore, emotional intelligence, mental health as a founder is very critical. And what you do on a day-to-day basis ensures that you're able to build systems around the same that can ensure that your employees are more productive. So for me, it's really important to understand that culture is not just its people, it's also the systems that you build. And really systems is some of these processes. How do I take a leave? How do I talk about challenges that I'm facing? What are the measures that are around this? Who are the people I can contact, etc. That's the systems, that's the instruments around culture that ensures that there's a healthier and more mentally sane workforce. So definitely very much excited to work with any employer in this conversation to see ways we can help you attract better candidates through really showcasing your employer brand and the employer value proposition. Thank you so much again, Tom, for having me, and very much excited to talk with more insight.
Yeah. Maybe just 5 words, because I think we're out of time.
Sounds good. I'll prioritize words carefully, but yeah, I think we're on the edge of this sort of paradigm shift from seeing mental health in the workplace as just, you know, a barrier to, you know, something that needs to be addressed acutely and through treatment, to something that's, you know, a fundamental building block of employee success, and then also, you know, company-wide success and company outcomes. So I think, you know, one of the most important things in that regard is sort of switching this mindset towards prevention and towards creating an environment holistically that promotes sort of positive aspects of mental health in the workplace as well, in addition to treatment of psychosocial issues. So I think, you know, one thought I'll just leave you with is just creating opportunities for connection and sort of going beyond asking, how are you, towards, you know, asking, how can I help you actually make this a better environment for yourself.
Great. Thank you so much, Harriet and Emily, but most importantly, thank all of you who attended, you know, this session. We really, you know, hope that you attended and you're part of this conversation. You know, we hope that this is just the beginning of this conversation, and that, you know, we continue having these conversations in our workplaces, in our lives, etc. Yeah, and so with that, have a good rest of your day and a good rest of the SunCalp Forum. Thank you so much to the SunCalp team, Jaya, and everyone else for also, you know, giving us this opportunity. And we hope that we will make this panel a mainstay of future SunCalps. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Tom, Harriet, and Emily.